urbanization is a very complicated process, and obviously people themselves make the city in all kinds of different ways. But very often they find themselves trying to make it in the midst of the circulation process of capital that builds penthouses and builds all kinds of things. And it means that the system is constantly growing, and there's constant surpluses of capital being produced that have to do something. And in recent times we've seen some pretty crazy, insane urbanization in the Gulf states, and now even in parts of New York, which don't make any economic or social sense, but are really about absorbing surplus capital for the purposes of the reproduction of capitalist class relations. Well, once upon a time societies were constructed so that there was an autonomous way of life, which you could call a peasant way of life. People on the land, self-sufficient, producing for themselves, maybe producing a bit of surplus to send into the city. But that has broken down a lot, particularly since Second World War, and now it's a process that's almost completed. There's been, if you like, a fusion of an urban process which is spreading outwards, and a transformation of rural life around a different model and mode of production. Increasingly, agriculture has become industrialized. Increasingly, it's become highly mechanized. There is not the employment out in the rural areas that there once was. The capacity of populations in those areas to reproduce themselves on a self-sufficiency basis is much reduced. So there is, if you like, a crisis in the independent capacity of peasant populations to reproduce their own culture, reproduce their own ways of life. And increasingly what we see is that many people drift into the city, but then that sets up an interesting situation, which is that they're working in the city, but their reproduction is in the countryside. I think it's important, I always look upon the right to the city as a political concept. It's not a sociological concept that says there's a group of people here who are urban and a group of people there who are rural. And it's not even a material concept in the sense that I can draw a line and say here is the city and here is the countryside, because actually they're integrated with each other. The movement between them, all of those sorts of things are going on. People in rural areas see the same television programs as the people, and so the idea of an independent cultural form is and I now would say, look, there is as much differentiation within those areas we call cities as there is between cities and countryside, because we end up with highly segregated cities, very rich regions of the city, very impoverished regions of the city, so-called slums and favelas and those kinds of things. So to me, the right to the city is a political right, and it's a right of citizenship, and it's a right of self-determination through the right to transform the environment in which one lives. For me, the question of, what kind of urbanization do we want? What kind of city do we want? Cannot be divorced from the question of what kind of people do we want to be? And what kind of social relationships do we want to prioritize? So those are the questions which the theme of the right to the city puts together for me. And I think they're very critical questions to ask in contemporary situations. What I think we should try to construct is a capacity of a fluid relation between city and countryside, which means that there has to be economic activities in the countryside which have sufficient power to maintain and sustain people so they don't have to go into the city to find work. And that is, if you like, one of the first things. The second thing is that when you look at something like a food supply, you will see a chain which takes you from the field where something is being produced to the place where it is being cooked or drunk or whatever. So that chain is something that is a perpetual movement and motion, if you like. And I think politically it's often been very interesting that sometimes when major questions erupt in the cities politically, there suddenly will be a big surge of support from rural areas because, you know, they're the same families and there's a lot of connectivity. So I would like to see us move towards a society in which that kind of connectivity between daily life in the city and daily life in rural areas is taken for granted. A country like Ecuador should aim to be pretty self-sufficient in all agricultural products, and it could be. But it seems to me that there is not a policy in place to do that. And if that was done here, then that would play some role in re-establishing a very clear political economic basis for a sustainable kind of rural life. I think it's mainly political. I mean, the power of agribusiness, the power of the supermarket chains and the like, you know, it's a political power, again, where a relatively small elite, you have a ruling class, a ruling oligarchy, is going to reshape the world in its interest rather than allow people to shape the world in their interest. It's a struggle over urbanization in general, and in the end it's a struggle over capital and over capitalism. To what degree should we continue to accept living in a society where most of the major decisions are taken in the name of capital by a very small elite who have immense power in society, and that means that the movements have to be against it, and the right to the city is one of those movements that can contribute to that politics.